I celebrated 14 years of being clean and sober on Friday, and I wanted to talk about the long-term experience of being clean and sober from a young age. So I came into recovery when I was 18 after a long, protracted struggle with addiction. I had many overdoses, I was depressed, my family thought I was going to die, I was over-medicated by psychiatrists, I was institutionalized in both mental hospitals and rehabs, and ultimately ended up at a reform school. I think that a lot of my institutionalization did damage and created trauma, mainly around feeling thrown away by the people who were supposed to love me. And I have a complicated relationship with that because I also realized that they were just trying to keep me alive, and I was not willing to be alive. And I have seen sometimes what can happen in people's lives when they are adults and they are allowed to make a decision to not go into treatment or not go into a mental hospital when they really need to. There were ways that I liked my institutionalization, so I was not able to make human connections because I was so afraid of everybody. So when I was in institutions, I at least could be taken care of by people and have proximity to humans. And when I was 18 and I became an adult, my parents finally kicked me out of the house, which also made me feel abandoned, but ultimately led me to take charge of my life and make a positive decision to go to rehab for the last time. After rehab, I went to a sober living house, and at this time in my life, it really looked like my future outlook was to be homeless or a sex worker, not a functioning member of society in the way that we think about them. And so an improvement for me would be to at least have a job, at least be employed. And all the messaging I was getting at that time was like, just be a functioning member of society. And I realize now that that was also a trauma because I really needed an autism diagnosis to recognize that my brain functions differently, and for me to just force myself to get a job and go to school and be a functioning member of society hurts me and burns me out. I also was not normal socially. I couldn't make normal social connections with people because of my past traumas and not trusting people, and so I just showed up in a fawn response with everyone. And I proceeded to go through this series of romantic relationships in which I thought every single one was going to be the one for me. And I realize now that I was just doing a fawn response because I didn't know how to make an actual emotional connection, because I had attachment wounding and because I have autism. And so I spent my first 10 years in recovery not actually making human connection and doing a lot of step work, so gaining a lot of self-awareness and ability for self-reflection, which is something that everyone can see in me. It's an ability I have that is a result of my 12-step work. But I was not able to make any emotional progress until I had the trauma piece, until I had the autism social piece to things. To understand that what I thought were social connections were acquaintance relationships. I didn't have anyone who actually knew me. I didn't actually rely on anybody. I was in hyper independence and over functioning. And the thing that woke me up to that was ending up in a narcissistic relationship where someone actually wanted to actively hurt me and manipulate me. And a lot of autistic people end up in these dynamics. That narcissistic relationship woke me up to actually doing my emotional work and actually figuring out that I had not been doing my emotional work for 10 years, but certainly building up the skills to do my emotional work. And I am critical of the 12 steps and 12-step programs for the way that they make people think that they're doing their emotional work. For me, either as a result of autism or just my unique personality, I was able to mostly hide from myself in doing step work. And I see step work today as being more of a way to spiritually center yourself, but not really a way to work through traumas. A lot of people who come into recovery early, I see them leave around 10 years. And I think the reason that I've been able to continue to attend 12-step is because I've been able to adapt my current understanding of everything to the way that the program works. And a lot of people want to call 12-step a cult. I think that it's not a cult in the way that it is flexible and adaptable to the way that I need to use it. So I don't vibe with a lot of the things that 12-step recovery believes, specifically the disease model, because I became willing to do my own research, and from reading Gabor Mate, that totally destroyed the disease concept of addiction for me. I think that 12-step recovery operates in a lot of guilt and shame dynamics that are not the best. I think that counting recovery time has a certain egotistical bent to it, and I think that it introduces unnecessary hierarchy. But I also understand that recovery continues to enrich my life. I have access to so many wise mentors who love me and unconditionally support me in the way that I wish I had unconditional supports growing up. I am critical of the abstinence model, especially as I read more about harm reduction and how a lot of people are locked out of recovery and healing just because they are not able to completely stop. And I understand that a lot of the dynamics that go on in 12-step recovery are just a way to have a least common denominator situation. And it's much easier to set a bar and say, this is the bar, rather than the bar is all over the place or the bar is individualized and customizable. But it absolutely is. And I have seen nothing in recovery that doesn't work with that model if you need it to. I just think a lot of people feel pushed away from the program, not accepted within the program if they think something differently. 12-step recovery is beautiful. It taught me community dynamics, collaboration with others. It gave me the ability to create connections with people for the first time when I was really close to not being able to come back to the human race. I think a lot of the way that people dealt with me when I was in the depths of my addiction did harm to me and caused trauma, especially the ways that I was misunderstood, and by extension, the ways that I misunderstood myself and was encouraged to not listen to what my actual feelings were. And I think that the recovery community is coming back around and understanding self-love and self-care, rather than this kind of pick yourself up by your bootstraps mentality that hurts a lot of people, and especially hurts people like me who are very sensitive. But ultimately, 14 years out, I still go to meetings. I still engage with recovery. I take what they say with a grain of salt. I believe different things. That's okay with me. I'm not rejected because of it. I have other community memberships, and I engage with other communities that are not based on having a problem together, but actually just like having common interests and common like positive attractors rather than negative attractors. I don't know if I agree so much with identifying with a label anymore. We say, I am an addict. I don't know if I love the idea as identifying myself as something with such a negative societal connotation attached. So more will be revealed there. And I don't know that I have much more to say on that.